Welcome to Voices from the Field podcast presented by Extra Innings Softball, where the stories are real, the conversations are honest, and the game goes way beyond the field. We're bringing you insight, inspiration, and all things softball from the people shaping the sport.
Welcome back to another episode of Voices from the Field with Extra Innings Softball. I'm really excited about this one today because I know just enough about it to be intrigued, and I'm excited to be able to get this information out to our subscribers and let them kind of learn that there's a whole bunch more going on in our sport than just showing up for practice and throwing the ball around and hitting it and pitching it. So I'm a big proponent at my age of working smarter, not harder. And I believe that motor preferences is going to be one of those things that will do it. So we as hosts, Katie and myself, will be learning alongside you. And I'm super excited to share this with you. First of all, we have Matt Woods, who is from Rhode Island. He graduated from Bryant University, where he was an outfielder. Lovely COVID, gave us podcasts and stuff like this, and also then took him to Maryland, which really intrigued him. And he went there, I believe, specifically to kind of learn the science behind motor preferences and has landed him where he is. We're also blessed with a longtime friend of mine, Suzy Willemssen. We go back a long time since we're the two old people who put us at the top. Are from 2007 back with the Washington Glory, the NPF Pro League. We said we were based out of Washington, D.C., but we were really out of Fairfax, Virginia. So there's a lot of information and all that stuff that goes along with it. She coaches the Washington Glory Gold, or just Glory Gold, excuse me.
Well, now it would be Virginia Glory. So
now we're properly in the right place.
Yes,
Virginia Glory Gold.
Yeah, Virginia, and it's not even gold. So now it's just Virginia Glory is the name of the organization, and then our teams.
Gotcha.
Yes,
and that was a branch off of the professional team that we had up there. So there's always good things that come out of chaos, and that's what I love about our sport. Yeah. So I actually just saw her out in Colorado with her team. So now we are sitting on a podcast, and what I would like is to kind of just go back and forth. But Matt, let's start with you and explain in layman's terms, like dumb it down for all of us softball people, what motor preferences is.
Yeah, motor preferences is biomechanics, but it's neurobiomechanics. So everything starts with the mind. When we have the right intentions, when we have those aha moments, it's because a certain cue or a feel makes sense to our brain. It makes sense. We understand it. So what we do at motor preferences through observation, through, balance and coordination testing, we can actually figure out the postures that work well for the athlete, and then using their feedback and asking, does this feel right? Does this does this make sense to you, et cetera? So the easiest way for people to understand what motor preferences are is a simple activity. So if you guys both cross your arms right now, perfect. And then if you try to cross them the other way, you got to think about it. It's not as natural. Same thing where if you fold your hands like this when you're in school and then you try to fold them the other way, it takes a second to get them in the right pattern. So those are essentially your motor preferences. Now, no one cares how you guys cross your arms or how you fold your hands, but people care how you pitch. People care how you throw. People care how you hit. We have, our motor preferences, like how we put our pants on the same every day, what shoe, we put on the same way, how we tie our shoes, etc. All those things are unconscious and they don't get coached out of us. But what does get coached out of us sometimes is our natural preferences when we swing, when we throw, when we pitch. So just getting people back to their natural movement, preferred way to move is not restricting. It's more giving them to freedom to be like, this feels really good and this is why it feels really good. And for you, it works. And for other people, maybe it doesn't work well, and that's totally okay. So bringing true individualization to the players and helping athletes around the country is what we're here for.
That's really cool. I think I've gotten a little taste of this in the recruiting process. My daughter went to Mississippi State and they had the terrestrials and aliens, all that stuff on their helmets. So got a little bit of a taste of it. Never really got a full thing to it. But as an older coach that's been doing it for a long time, I think the thing that I hear when you're saying for me that's very interesting is when I'm giving lessons, I'll say something to someone and I can almost watch it where you can see it almost confuse their body, like their brain, not their body, their brain, like they're trying to make their body get it. And I've gotten to where, does that make sense to you? and you can see them and they'll kind of go, so then I've been doing it long enough. I'll ask or say it in a different way. And I say I'm getting them to do the same thing, but saying it in a different way. So in some ways, maybe doing some of what you're talking about with not even knowing I'm doing it, just because I started playing softball back when Jesus played. So I've got a lot of time under my belt in doing it. So I think that's really interesting that if what you're saying from a science background, that you have the ability to test it and give it to quicker, it allows all level of coaches, all level of athletes to progress faster.
Yes, exactly. Because if you think about it, every coach is going to teach to their subconscious profile. So, and what I mean by that is every coach is going to teach the drills, the constraints, the feels, the cues that worked for them. And that makes total sense. Like, obviously, we've been programmed or learned, through trial and error our whole life. And it's not saying players can't be successful through trial and error, but by getting an assessment, you can push the right button sooner. And time is everything in our game, whether it's in high school, college, etc. You have limited amount of time. So as coaches, if we can take a step back in our non-biased view, and instead of imposing what worked for us onto every player, we can take a step back and say, this probably would work well for this player because she's aerial and she likes to be a little bit taller in her posture and she likes to create speed. Or, hey, this player is a little bit more terrestrial. They like flexion based. They like to feel their load. They build their present from their past. So just getting information on how the player thinks and being able to communicate to that player is invaluable. Because at the end of the day, like, our bodies want to survive. We want to basically expend as little energy as possible while still reaching our goal. So by understanding that, of course, like, I'm going to teach a drill to you that worked for me, and I'm not going to teach a drill that I didn't like to you because I didn't like it. But understanding that there is a time and a place for that drill that you didn't like for that certain player is huge for these coaches to understand and ultimately get the best out of their players.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
Awesome. So give me a little bit more of the science behind it, because I hear you using these big words that I'm sure people that are listening are like, what does this mean? So what's the science behind it, and how does it translate to, performing on the field? Do you need a new way to level up your game? I know travel softball season is in full force right now, and I want to make sure that you guys know about our Drill Zone page on our website. You can check out our Drill Zone, which is a growing library of position-specific drills to help players improve their skills and stay sharp. From hitting to defense to pitching, we've got something for every athlete. Our commit crew members, as well as some former college softball players, coaches, and our ambassadors gave their best drills for you. So go to our website, extrainningsoftball.com, go to the Extra tab, and there you will find our Drill Zone page.
So our science comes from our parent company, Volodalen, Volodalen. They're a French-based company. They actually just expanded their facility over and moved to Switzerland because they were getting so big and taking on so many clients. So they have 9 PhDs over there in Switzerland. Wow. They've tested over 27,000 athletes. They've worked a lot with, the Premier League soccer teams over there, a bunch of Tour de France athletes and bike fitting, a lot of, European-based sports, but never really baseball, softball. So, our two co-owners, Matt Swope, who's the head coach at Maryland, and David Genest, who is the director of performance and now is moving to the U.S., they were the founders. It's a funny story how it actually all started, and I'll get back to, the science. So Matt Swope was, big into anchoring. He was a hitting coach at Maryland, during COVID, trying to find better ways to teach athletes, and he got it down to the rabbit hole of MBTI, which is different personality types, and trying to communicate differently with his players. And so he was posting some anchoring videos on LinkedIn, and David Genest, who is now our co-founder, was commenting well, how do you know this drill works if you don't know X, X, and X? And so instead of Swope, kind of dismissing him, he was like, hop on a Zoom call in 3 minutes. So they hopped on a Zoom call together, and Swope's mind was blown. And David Genest has done 20 to 25 years of research, studying, learning of this methodology. And he got into it because his son was born with autism, dyslexia, and hyperactivity disorder. So he was trying to find holistic ways to help his son, navigate through the world, quote unquote, a little bit more normal. And essentially through this research has actually, he talks about how his son was diagnosed with level 2, autism. Now it's down to level 1. He knows where to sit him in the classroom based on his motor eye and where he takes in information. It's calming to him. So he's helped his son out, and he got into this because of him. And now it's turned into, a passion of both theirs, both baseball and softball. So long story short, our parent companies in France just expanded. They've tested over 27,000 athletes. And we have, scientific studies, measurements, research of all of those athletes, concluding into different vocabulary that we use, whether it's aerial and terrestrial to discuss center of gravity posture. You have axial and large, whether you like your hands closer to your body or away from your body, horizontal or vertical. We see it all the time in softball. Everyone starts with their elbows further apart in their pitching setup, but we know for some athletes, they actually like to be a little bit more vertical. So just helping these athletes move the way they prefer rather than imposing some of these movements that make them more effective than efficient. That's basically where our science comes from over in our parent company, as well as progressing it within ourselves.
So looking in a crystal ball, instead of 20 years down the road, we should be able to see and say she's an aerial or she's a terrestrial, as opposed to she works with Katie, she works with Suzy, or she works with Carrie, is what you're saying.
That's the ideal world. That's the ideal world. Yep.
Okay. Well, Suzy, let me ask you this, because obviously you're a softball coach, and I'm assuming since you're on the call with us, you've worked with motor preferences.
Yes.
Explain to me, from just good old girl softball, back and forth bantering, why, and what have you seen it do for your athletes? How has it transformed you as a coach?
Well, I remember going to the clinic, and as I was hearing the information, wanting to put my head down and cry. Because I really knew I had messed up a whole bunch of kids. And I wish I could go back in time and say, hey, I'm sorry. And actually one being my daughter. So it gave a whole new perspective and awareness, and it gave answers. And kind of as what Matt was saying earlier, I understood why certain things felt good to me. And of course, that's how I would teach. And then getting the knowledge that there's differences, all the stuff that you learn, it just opened up a whole new world of collaboration, because I believe that the athlete I'm with, I'm trying to give her the tools. I want her to own her swing or own her pitch. And it covers fielding, throwing, finding out if somebody's a breathe in. Well, that's why they want to stand up. So, and I'm a breathe out so I can stay down. But if somebody's a breathe in, they feel stronger when they come up so they can breathe in. So then you started seeing even positions out in the field, why somebody might want to come up. Well, they're a breathe in. So again, it was like an education of allowing somebody to do things that felt right for them, even though that might felt different for me, or quote unquote was wrong in what we would perceive as the correct way to do it in teaching. You would see players, when I'm working with them, it's like, hey, your foot might want to do this. That's okay. Don't let somebody coach that out of you. A totally new perspective. And seeing the smiles just light up. I was over in the Netherlands, so we didn't really have a good language being able to talk, but I was able to put them in certain positions. And even with that, just seeing their eyes light up when they felt stronger, when after just doing some initial testing to see where they might want their hands and so forth. It was amazing. You take a small child and you say, hey, or even somebody older, I'm like, forget all instruction. Just put your hands where you'd want them to go. If you just could put it anywhere. And believe it or not, it's usually their strongest part. I say the athlete knows, the body knows. So
that makes sense. So let me ask you this, as a coach, and then I'll shut up and let Katie ask some questions. As a coach, let's say you're working a clinic that aren't your players.
Right.
And you've got 4 kids at a station that walk up. How do you incorporate the motor preference that quick? Is it just a simple breath that you can do little things? Obviously, motor preferences are much deeper and much more involved in what you're doing, to be able to really implement it on a daily basis as an athlete or as a coach. But how have you seen it transform your immediate coaching?
First, that was a challenge because not able to take somebody through the test, but actually now it's so much fun because whether it's a station, and in fact, a couple weeks ago, I was helping at the Notre Dame camp out in Colorado, and I did a little presentation, and all it was I was able to do the breathing, but it was letting the players know that there's different ways that they want to move. And like you did the crossing of the arms, and everybody was different. And so they would cross their arms, I'm left over right. I'd go around to the girls that were right over left and go, okay, you're going to stink. You're going to stink. Oh, you're a good one if you're a left over right. And then they're looking at me and I said, so imagine that's what a lot of the instruction has been. So immediately it resonates. And then you just talk about how their body might want to move and with the breathing. And if I had 4 girls, I would do things real quick, but I just had them explore. Do you like to get more in your legs, as Matt was saying? Do you like to be more upright? And it's just like, what does your body want to do? And it just gives them an awareness. So then it was amazing the feedback I got. And that was like 12 girls. And just going around and doing the breathing, but then they knew there was so much more. And then a lot of them reached out. They wanted more information. It's awareness. It's awareness and collaboration. It gives them the tools, the power. They weren't crazy why they couldn't do something. So it was just, it's been the coolest thing.
It sounds like a lot of freedom. And I think that's what most athletes are in search of.
Yes.
And what I feel like most coaches still today want to take away, because it's easier to put everybody in a box than it is to work. And I'm not saying that I blame them, because I've had it when you have 20 kids. Like, how are you supposed to teach all those different levels, when it's you,
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, the higher level you go, you've got a lot more people to be able to implement things. When it's just you, I understand why saying, hey, we're going to do it X, Y, and Z. And obviously, like you're saying, I think it would tend to be towards my preferences, because it's what I'm comfortable in teaching or what I understand and know, But even with my own daughter as a 17-year-old getting ready to go off to college and stuff and play, I can watch when she's worked with someone and I look at her swing and go, you don't even look like you. Like, that's all I say is, like, you don't even look comfortable. You look like you're wearing your dad's shoes. Like, that's the only way I know how to explain it, And so it's amazing. We're actually having to try to work through some of that right now, because, someone didn't want her sliding forward, and now she's not sliding forward. And I'm like, yeah, you look better on your pitch selection, but you're not hitting as well. Like,
those are the two questions we always ask first. Like, just because you get your motor preference assessment doesn't mean you have to impose it. And that's the hardest thing for the American culture. We want to impose and fix right away. But we always ask the athletes, we use their feedback. Like, are you performing up to standards, and are you healthy? If both of those answers are yes, we don't have to impose. But if one of them is, no, I'm having extra soreness here, or no, I'm not performing at the level, now we have the information in terms of the continuum of ranges that your body prefers to move in. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that, if we say someone's aerial, like, it's very rigid. It's not. There's over 32,000 combinations of, a motor preference, basically, assessment. And that's not even getting into primitive reflexes that take over motor control in fight or flight situations, not even getting to flat feet that we found. Like, there are so many different combinations. And you even look at it, from MLB's standpoint, like Mookie Betts and Bobby Witt Jr. are both aerials, and they move, very opposite in some ways and very similar in other ways. So just understanding that, yes, if we're saying someone is aerial, horizontal, axial, like, that can look something different than another aerial, horizontal, axial. But within that continuum, we're just trying to find the best or most preferred way for your body to move, so you have that freedom. We talk about all the time, your mind has an acceptance tank. First thing people say is keep your back elbow up when you start hitting earlier on in your age, but we know some people actually like to keep their back elbow down. So just imagine if they're an elbow down person and they've been coached to keep their back elbow up. Well, part of their brain is expending energy keeping that up, and then the rest of their brain is focusing on what pitch am I getting, what's my plan in this at bat, how am I going to do that? And obviously these athletes are elite compensators. Like, these people are elite athletes, they're able to do it, but at some point they reach a stance or an ability that they can't compensate anymore, and their performance is dipping. So giving their body that natural freedom and coordination and balance to move allows their acceptance tank to be on what's really important, their timing, their pitch selection. And that's what makes you good in a game. I think a big misconception is, if I'm in profile, that automatically makes me a better player. Well, it stacks the odds in your favor, but one thing motor preferences don't change is your talent. Everyone has a talent cap. Like, not everyone's going to be a professional softball player. Not everyone's going to play at OU, South Carolina, Mississippi State. But we want to optimize you. Like, let's stack the odds in your favor, give you the best shot to succeed, and allow you to actually do what's important in the game, which is work on your timing and your pitch selection and all that stuff. So it's just a tool. It's a tool in a tool belt. I guess biasly, I think it's an important tool. I experienced it in my own playing career and the mental freedom I had, but it's information that can be very important and give you that mental freedom to do what you got to do on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. All I can think about is, I know we all have problems with softball nowadays, but I'm like, this is the time to play with all these different, like, I'm sitting here being like, man, if I would have known that, who knows, else I could have done. Cause I was one of those players where I think Suzy mentioned it, like, stay on your legs. Like, I just couldn't do it. And oh, my coach after coach after coach is like, you got to stay on your legs. You got to stay on your legs. And I could never figure it out. And I felt kind of like what Suzy said. Like, I felt like I wasn't, okay, I'm not a good hitter because I can't stay on my legs. So I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, God, what a time to play softball. We have all this information. It's amazing. But I kind of want to talk about, you mentioned being healthy and being a main priority. Is there any kind of science behind, could this prevent injury or overuse? Is there anything behind that when you do these motor preference stuff, when you do this stuff and you learn about your body, can it prevent injury and overuse? I know Carrie mentioned, Macy's playing 12 games and however many days. Is there a way that this can prevent injury in the future and help athletes stay healthy long term?
Right. So I think prevent injuries are always going to be a part of the game. There are going to be, so many variables that lead to injury that it's almost impossible to prevent injuries entirely. But what you can do is stack the odds in your favor. One university that we work with, they have an aerial catcher, which means she prefers extension, but we know in a catching position that demands so much flexion, so much knee bend. So what we do, we have to respect her position and what it requires her to be on a given basis. So we can't give her, strength and conditioning 5 days of extension, plyometrics, rebound when her sport specific position requires so much flexion. So having the information, maybe we're going to do 3 days of plyometrics and then add in 2 days of flexion-based exercises, knowing that her body is going to demand that during the game. So having the information, we can make, educated decisions and kind of push and pull that mouse based on what the athlete's feeling. If she's, doing 4 days plyometrics and 1 day of flexion and she's like, yeah, my hamstrings are killing me, like my knees are very sore, like we know she's doing too much plyometrics for her position, so we need to add another day of flexion. How does this feel? This feels really good. Okay, let's do another day of flexion. No, I'm sore here now. Like, okay, now we know, like, based on the athlete's feedback, like what her body needs for what it needs to do in the game. And like, development is important, but production is the most important. Like, you want to succeed on the field. So just respecting how their body naturally wants to move, but also taking into context the position, what their schedule is like, the ability to, refer to that information. We have seen across all of our teams and universities, yes, injury reduction has been there. There are still going to be injuries, but the ability for pitchers to bounce back sooner, to be able to go, a complete game the day before and to be able to do it again instead of faltering in the fifth inning. Like, the ability to bounce back because you're not using as much energy because you're moving efficiently rather than effective has allowed these pitchers as well as hitters recover a little bit better because they're not expending that energy too much on the front end. So, to answer your question, there are always going to be injuries. There are so many variables, but if we can stack the odds in our favor, have the information to know how the body naturally wants to move, we can kind of push and pull that needle with the player's feedback to help them be the healthiest as possible.
So cool.
Hey, Katie, here's like kind of a good analogy. Particularly in the higher levels, you're building a high performance race car and you're putting in a supercharged engine. So imagine that high performance race car having their wheels misaligned. You're gonna crash. So when we see, particularly at the higher elite level, having those wheels aligned, having them move in performance, understanding their motor shoulder, where they're strong is critical. At the younger ages, it's kind of like a Yugo or a mom van. You're going, wheels are misaligned. It's okay. But you wonder why we had a rash of lower back injuries, stress fractures. I could go on. It's because we're trying to put supercharged engines and the car is not ready for this. And so that's why, particularly in pitching, and it is critical to at least have an understanding and awareness of what the body wants to naturally do. Because I'll have kids come to me and it's when you go back to that injury prevention, but think about that. High performance race car, all the strength and conditioning being put into this engine and the wheels are misaligned. It is going to be not a good thing. So,
I'm just sitting here as a simpleton and listening to you guys trying to wrap my head around this. Why would I get my child to do this? Why? And to me, I think the big thing, and I've worked in a lot of different industries within this sport, is that, that it's not really injury prevention. It is really injury reduction. I think that's the two key terms that people need to hear. And then I'm sitting here, am I being just a total simpleton in talking or saying this? Is that I think about going into a shoe store for athletic shoes and trying on all these different shoes, and ones that I try on, I go, and my daughter goes, oh my God, I love these. That's almost kind of like the difference of what we're talking about. That's as simple as I can make it. And if I'm forced to wear my daughter's shoes, I get blisters and my feet hurt. If she's forced to use my shoes, she gets blisters and they hurt. So I think that's the part that when people say, well, why are there so many different types of athletic shoes out there? And why are there so many different people that wear them? And then even take it a step further. The younger kids are looking at what Jocelyn Allo is wearing or Skylar Wallace is wearing, and they want to wear the same ones as her because it's the brand name, it's the cool name. And there's not a lot of knowledge or reason why. And I wish that's maybe where we can get this motor preference to step into our sport and say, hey, you want to be Skylar Wallace? Good. You're going to be Skylar Wallace as Katie Lively, doing it the way Katie Lively does, and you're going to bury Skylar Wallace as opposed to trying to be Skylar Wallace, if that makes sense.
Right.
Correct. 100%. I think the shoe analogy is so good because we even see it in, being at Maryland, like we're an Under Armour school. Bryce Harper is the poster child for it. We all have Harper cleats, but we also know Harper is more flexion based, has more cushion in his shoes. So all of our aerials, we actually get performance insoles and give them a little bit firmer of a ground so they can get vertical in their movements. And we see that a bunch. Like a lot of these, Nike, Adidas, Steph Curry, a little bit more aerial, like he's got a firmer insole, but for a terrestrial, they're looking for more cushion, like not going to work as much. Not saying you can't do it, but, are you having shin splints? Are your knees hurting? Like, is your Achilles sore? Like now having the profile, you can be like, oh, well, you're an aerial and your Achilles is sore. You're probably in too much extension. Let's add some cushion to it. So now you can kind of push and pull that needle based off what the body is feeling. And you can be like, I want to be this player, but I'm going to be this player being myself, not emulating them, because what works for them, what ticks for them might not work for you. And that is totally okay. That's totally, because everyone's literally is different. Why we like different foods, why we say it all the time, exercise classes, there's hot yoga, there's, the Peloton, there's Pilates, everyone has a preference on to what type of workout they do. It's the options in the world are because we have our own preferences. And now we're taking it to the game of baseball and softball and allowing people to move freely within what their body prefers and not what the next person next to them prefers.
Even bats.
Even bats. It's really interesting you bring up the bats because I won't mention the company because I don't work for them anymore, but it was a company that did all things in softball outside of bats that wanted to get into bats. And I was like, oh, don't do it. It's nope. Everyone sees it's a car payment every time you buy a bat. But we were doing some research, or I was doing some research at tournaments, and we took like the 5 most popular bats and we painted them Pepto-Bismol pink. So no one knew what they were.
Right.
And we stuck them out there, and then they put the company's prototype out there as well. And I predicted prior to us going to these tournaments that we would invite kids into the batting cage. We'd throw a front toss and we'd say, you can use all the bats. You can do whatever you want. Most of them would use all the bats. And then we'd say, hey, pick which bat would be yours. And they'd say A, B, C, or D, or whatever it was. And I predicted that it would be close to 50% of the kids would pick a different bat than what they actually swung, but they were so attached to the brand, the Nike Swoop or whatever it is. That's what I wear. It doesn't matter. It's killing my feet. That's what I wear. They came back over 72% picked a different bat than what they actually would swing. Now, none of them picked the bat that the company that I told them they weren't because it was terrible. But with that being said, to me, that was something that was so cool to observe and watch because it was like going out into nature and throwing out something and seeing what they picked. And it was so different. And to me, I think you're bringing some answers to what that is in such a simplistic way. And we don't even have to talk costs and stuff. We can send them to your website. We can do all that stuff. We'll give you a chance to plug all that. But to me, I think the thing is when people go, oh, that's so much money, I'm thinking, oh my God, I just bought 4 bats last year. And let's just say that's $2,000. That's $2,000 I could have paid on my car. So don't talk to me about what's expensive. If you didn't want to spend money, a lot of money, or maybe never be able to retire in your life as a parent of a softball player or a coach, then you probably should have picked a different sport that maybe needed like 5 or 6 players on a court with little skinny little things on it, one ball, So, and if I was smart, I would have picked a thermostat sport. So don't hear what I'm not saying. I would have done that. I'm still mad that I didn't buy my daughter golf clubs, but that's a whole nother story because I could have just sat in the clubhouse. So talk to me how I look at a travel softball coach, a high school softball coach. Obviously, colleges are in a different one because those are being paid for most of the time, but there's a lot of colleges that aren't too. Why and what's the ratio return? What do you see in a return? And Suzy, you can address that. Matt, you can address that. Like, why am I investing in this? How quick do you feel like you see results? Other than obviously, I think anybody that coaches does it for the love of the game and trying to transform and help individual players. But at some point in time, do I buy balls? Do I buy motor preference? Do I buy bats? What is it that I'm looking at doing? Explain some of that for our audience.
It's 100% return, 100%. For you as a coach, gaining your knowledge and then helping your player explore and have an awareness and have the ability to own their throw, their pitch, their swing. I mean, that's what it's about. We're there to help them reach their dreams. And going to the bats, well, now I know what this person is. I might guide them towards this kind of bat. So everything else has a perspective where knowing the motor preference would be beneficial, not to mention injury. Once you do it, you cannot undo it. You cannot unsee it. And you want to go back in time. But every single thing, it just gives you an unreal perspective of total freedom, of exploration, being collaborative with your athletes, getting answers, why they couldn't do things, why you as a coach couldn't feel it and not understand. It is absolutely 100%. I have never done anything that has been as game-changing as this has. And you have to kind of drop the ego and go, you know what? I raised my hand because prior to this knowledge, I would do those things. And again, I'm not saying any judgment, no judgment at all, because you don't know. But once you know, it's amazing and it's so much fun, and seeing their eyes light up and their smiles, you can't buy that. But that's what we're doing. That's why we coach. It's to help them. 100%.
100%. I totally agree. Like this isn't, an easy task. This isn't it's not an easy task. It definitely is going to take some time. It's going to take some effort to learn, refine, get better. You have to be willing to put in the time. And, at the end of the day, if taking care of your athletes and giving your athletes the best chance to be their best selves is a priority for you, then this is for you. If you want to continue to plug a one size fit all model for your athletes, that is totally fine. It's totally up to you. It's a lot of information, but once, like Suzy said, once you learn it, you can't unsee it. Like I can't watch a baseball or softball game the same. Like I cannot watch it. Like it's those nights where you're up in bed and being like, why can't I get this athlete to do this? Like I know she has all these tools. Why can't I help her put it together? Like this is giving the answers as to why that might be. Like yourself, Katie. Like maybe you were an aerial and like instead of you for years and years being told to get in your heels and to get grounded, like you stood straight up like Cody Bellinger and said, let me just create speed here and move freely and work with more in my toes rather than my heels. Like just having that mental freedom, I can speak to myself in my athletic journey. I did it in my 5th year. I came off a really good year in which I won player of the year in my conference. And like, I could argue like I felt like I felt really, really good. And I even learned things in my 5th year that's why I can't hit, a breaking ball or a movement pitch because I'm associated, which means I don't like hip shoulder separation. But anytime my foot got down early on a breaking ball pitch, my upper body would just rotate to try to catch up to my upper body. And I would just top spin pitches to right field. I have to swing all together at one time, like an Aaron Judge, like an associated mover. And I started hitting those breaking balls in the gaps for doubles and homers. So understanding why am I making this mistake gives you so much mental freedom and consistency throughout the season because, you can't look at mechanics without asking yourself, was I on time and did I swing at a strike? You have to answer those two questions. If you can answer yes, then you can move on. Okay, then what am I doing mechanically? And when you have that information of how you prefer to move, you can be like, boom, boom, here, I'm a little bit off here. I'm a little bit steep in my bat path here. I know I'm a horizontal mover, so I like to swing flat. Boom, that's it. And I get right back to it. And I became, in my 5th year, outside of me running into a wall and getting a concussion, I had never felt so pain-free and I had never felt so in control of my game plan every day that I could just go out there and have fun because I was never worried about, I'm 1 for 9 right now. Like, let me get wider in my stance. Let me get taller in my stance. I knew exactly how I preferred to move. And it just became that level-headed in my mind. Like, I'm not swinging at the right pitches or, I'm a little late here, and that's why. And I was just in total cruise control of my career. I think one of the biggest advantage, too, that isn't talked about is social media. Like, there is so much information online, and it's good for the right person. Like the ability for me to sift through social media and all the hitting, pitching gurus and see what they're teaching. Like, okay, I'm watching here. Yep, this could work for me because I know my body prefers it. Oh, no, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to keep scrolling. And that doesn't mean the same person is going to scroll the way I scroll, but it helped me sift through all the information because all the information is good out there for the right person. All the strength and conditioning drills are good for the right person. You know, we talk about it all the time, strength and conditioning. If I'm a terrestrial, you know, I prefer or can have a lot of flexion. So when I'm squatting, I can go full depth. But for an aerial, maybe I'm doing quarter squats or more speed related squats, box squats, quarter squats, and I'm not getting as much depth. And that's totally okay. You start thinking about it, like all the people we've looked at, mainly the strength and conditioning coaches are terrestrials because they really prefer to add more weight, you know, lift for a long amount of time. Like they're, rather than endurance, they're more like marathon runners than sprinters. So you start to see like the people who are coaching some of these avenues, like have that subconscious profile because they like to lift themselves. So now you just get into the nitty gritty. And once you start to see it, you don't unsee it, which is the cool part.
Yeah. Well, and it builds confidence. Like that's what all I'm thinking when I'm hearing you is like, again, okay, I'm not good at weightlifting. That's, you know, oh, I'm not a good weightlifter. Well, it's not, maybe not, you're not a good weightlifter. You're just not good at, you know, maybe getting the depth. Maybe you need to do more speed squats. So I think too, I love that it could really give athletes more confidence instead of saying, oh, well, I can't do this particular movement well. I'm not a very good athlete. It's, oh, that's just not the movement that I can do well, but I can do this really well. So I like that too, because it just adds a bunch of confidence, in my opinion, to athletes, both in the weight room and on the field, hitting, pitching, whatever it is.
Well, and I think what I'd like to ask and add, I think as a coach, when I'm hearing this, I think that getting through, say, your team and putting them in the categories, it sounds like a tremendous amount of work. And it is. It's the organization. It's the sitting down and saying, what do I have on my team? Who's going to do what in my mind? Then work's going through the preseason and doing it. But I sit there and think about, well, what if I had a team of 15 and let's just say I had 5, 5, and 5. Let's just make it easy. That's it. Just in a perfect world, God gave me 5. I don't know, aliens, robots, whatever you want to name them, would that fall within your motor preference? How easy is it then to organize practice? Because then I'm just saying you 5 are going in this group together. As females, you don't have to think about who likes who, because if you put people together who learn the same, you're already taking care of some of the drama that you create in a team. So I've got these here and these here and these here. And, you know, I think the cool thing is I could have my 3 drills for this group, my 3 drills for this group, my 3 drills for this group. And they're not necessarily the same, but they understand why they're not the same. And then what's really cool is to be able to say, bring it together. You do that to me. I mean, what if that added 50 points to your team batting average?
Right.
That probably adds another 10 wins to your batting average. I mean, I think that's the thing that I challenge people to think about from a cost standpoint or from an organizational standpoint. And then twofold, I'm going with my kid going to Arkansas after this next year. I'm sitting here thinking, like, what if we got this stuff into what she was doing earlier, so that when she's at that next level, that's just a whole nother step up and an advantage for her to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Because I think the biggest thing, and probably with my kid, it's not for me because we talk softball all the time. It's obviously both of our passion to be poor for our whole life and play it. But at the same time, it's like, what if she was able to know those things so that she could verbalize that to the coaches? Hey, I'm feeling this, you know, and take ownership. That's the thing that if it's the last thing that I do before I'm done with everything I'm doing and God calls me home, is I want to be able to give ownership to these young women of what they're doing, because I feel like from the electronics going in their ears and you have to wear a face mask, you got to do it this way. Like, I want some freedom for these kids to own it, because it's like I say to I've always had my kid call, she's a catcher. And from the time she was 12, I'm like, call the game. I'm not calling it for you. Like, I'll help you. If you don't know, give it to me. You got the best seat in the house. You know, your pitcher is the best. Go through it. And it seems like the higher you go, the more they want to take that away, because they have all this information. And I don't even like watching the game as much. Like, I'm like, no, you're taking away the flow of the game. You're taking away this. Now, I am not saying with all the data that these college coaches and everybody has it shouldn't be a give and a take and a share and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm seeing in that is that they play like robots. Like, they don't play the game. I watch and I'm like, why is their base running so bad? Well, it's because every decision's made for them from the time they put spikes on at at 10 or 12, and that's what I love so much about this motor performance. And I think it would really even open up coaches' thought processes that way, as is to say, I don't have to control all of it and I get better.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like a really cool example, is we're not reworking any drills, we're not reworking any practice plans. It's all intention based. So if I have a group of middle infielders out there taking ground balls, like my infielders who are considered large or more distal, like they prefer to have that banana arc around the ball. They like to see the side of the ball and work back through it. Where you have your axial defenders who like to mainly go right at the ball rather than create that banana turn. So it's the same drill. They're both receiving ground balls. They're just doing it intentionally in a different way and what makes sense for them. We have Suzy talked about it yesterday. I know she's off. Like she was having, one of her really, really good infielders being taught to attack the ball right at it and play at the balls of their feet. But she's terrestrial large, which means she likes to be a little bit more flexion based, and she likes to work around the ball, see the side view, and then work back through. So just understanding that these two separate athletes are receiving the same ground ball. They're just intention in how they go about it is a little bit different, and that's totally okay. We see that in the game literally every single day. Like this athlete is better going to her right than her left. And is that because she's pushing off her extension leg than flexion leg? Like we see this athlete stealing a base is better pushing off her left foot than her right foot. Well, is she pushing off her extension leg versus her flexion leg? So now you're just taking the information, finding out where the athlete is more balanced and coordinated so they can play more under control. And they have that freedom of, I know exactly how my body likes to move, and now I know why it likes to move that way. And like you said, they can be their own best self-coach, which is what all we want as coaches is the athletes to make that pitch-by-pitch adjustment on their own. And I agree with you, Carrie and Katie. What happens, with the data is sometimes we get lost in it and we become like so reliant on it that it takes away from, the true art of the game, which is being able to be your best self-coach and adjust on the fly. The data is awesome. Like it is a huge reference point. It's additional information we have to produce. But at the end of the day, it's information. The motor preference assessment is information so that you take the information and you can produce with it. Yeah. So nothing is the be all end all other than, the production. Right. The numbers don't lie. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to give you the floor to kind of talk about where to go if someone's listening that's like, I want to get involved with this. Where do they find you? How do they get involved? Kind of give us all that kind of stuff.
No doubt. So we have our social medias, which, we constantly post different content, different player breakdowns, a bunch of the information on our science and communication there. So we have on Instagram, we are at Motor Preferences. And then on X, we are at Motor Preference. So we'd love to have you guys follow. We also put up our own podcast, first episode this week on Spotify and Apple Music, as well as YouTube. So if you look up MPE Pod, we'll have our podcast on there with our two co-owners, Matt Swope and David Janess, as well as myself and my other colleague, Nick Robinson, who's the operations manager, just talking about, real life examples, explaining who we are, how we joined MPE, and then obviously invite some people on that are working with us, which will be really exciting. We also have on our website, we have in-person clinics that are open to the public. We've had anywhere from major league coaches to youth travel ball coaches show up to those, anywhere in between big time college softball coaches and travel ball pitching coaches that are just doing remote training. So literally everyone from A to Z has shown up to those there. You learn about the 10 to 12 core motor preferences, how to observe them, the science behind them, how to test for them and be able to ask real-time questions to us. And we go all over the country with that. What is also cool, we just released in May our baseball, softball level 1 e-course. And that is the same exact information that you get in an in-person clinic, except the fact that we can't really check your testing form as well as the real-time questions. But what we have after the fact, once you complete the e-course, we have our community Zoom each month. So we open up the floor to anyone who's been quote unquote trained and ask any questions they have, give us any player troubles that they've had. We're so accessible, and I think we haven't communicated that as well. Like we are super accessible. Like our direct emails are on our website. Like please shoot us an email. Please shoot us a text. My cell phone is going to be in my response email. Like we want to be accessible for everybody and help out whoever we can. What I did for you guys, I actually created a coupon code if people are interested in our e-course for a 10% discount. So it'll actually be Voices from the Field 1 with a capital V, no spaces, Voices from the Field 1. So if people are listening are interested in taking our course, it'll 10% discount because we want to help as many people as possible. And that's a great way to get the knowledge that we give in our in-person clinic, and it's a little bit more manageable if you have teams, travel, etc. You can do it on your own time. Yeah, we're excited to expand our community, help as many people as possible. Please reach out to us email-wise if you have any questions. And from a player training and assessment side, we have trained coaches all over the country that we can point you to get your athlete assessed. We're also all over the country. You know, I'm in the New England area, my colleagues in the Mid-Atlantic, and then our other co-founder is a little bit more south. Getting an assessment on the East Coast, as well as when we travel to a bunch of our universities this fall, we're going to be all over the maps. Coordinating assessment won't be too bad, and we would love to help you guys out with that as well. Yeah, awesome. I'm excited about it. I love working with the players. That's my favorite part of the job.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I just am super excited about it. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to it. And who knows, maybe Extra Innings Softball will be throwing a big event that we can have you show up at and access. So I would highly challenge people, if you're willing to pay car payments for a bat that only lasts 5 or 6 months, you might as well learn something that could last your athlete's career. And I just would love to say thank you. And I look forward to working with you.
Equally, thanks to you guys. I'm so grateful to be on, and thank you guys for taking the time to have us on and allow us to jointly spread the word and hopefully help as many athletes and coaches as possible. Just, get the best out of themselves and the players. So I appreciate you guys so much, and anything you guys ever need from the MPE side, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Absolutely. Have a blessed day.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Voices from the Field, presented by Extra Innings Softball. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe to us on Spotify, and visit our website at extrainningssoftball.com for more stories, rankings, and updates from around the game. We'll see you guys next week.